Life fascinating. Life is fascinating. Life is like sex. Yes, it is. It goes up and down, up and down. A life can be messy, also like sex. Take my life, for instance. Born blind, partially deaf at the age of 5, diagnosed with life-threatening kidney disease at 22. You might think I had a difficult start. Fortunately for me, I have a very positive mum and a supportive family. Now, I was born with a rare eye condition, which meant I couldn't open my eyes in any light. So I spent the first couple of years of my life in the dark. Around the age of 3, I was given dark glasses, like Stevie Wonder, and I could open my eyes slightly and go out and play. Now, we lived in a one-way street, a dead end, so I always knew which way traffic came and went. And I was brought up normally, so I played in the streets with my friends, kicked a football about, and rode around on a huge three-wheel bike and crashed into everything. It was great fun. I have an older brother and sister, so my mum realized I was no different to them, and I was intelligent, apart from my eyesight problem and hearing difficulty. So she realized I needed to be educated in order to have a chance in life. So from the age of 5, I went to a school for children with physical disabilities every day, 30 kilometers from my home by taxi. And I was born with a rare eye condition, so I don't have any color nerves. But I have my rods, the nerves that allow you to see in black and white, and also in dim light, like when you enter into a cinema. So using my black and white nerves, I was able to look at objects, and also to follow the sound of a person's voice. So when I went to school, I was able to see, or rather sense, really large black letters on white paper. I could sense the shapes, so I was able to read and write. But as I got older, my light sensitivity began to decrease, and by the age of 10, print got smaller, and I'd stopped learning. By the age of 10, 11, and certainly by 12, I couldn't really see anything at all. So I went to a boarding school for visually impaired and blind children over 400 kilometers away from my home. I'd stay there for about 6 weeks at a time and come home on the holidays. And it was at this school where I learned to read and write using Braille, the tactile dots that in various combinations make up the alphabet and the numbers. And I also was given mobility training, which is using a long white cane like this to find objects on the ground to prevent me from tripping. And I also had route training. So this means learning a route, so going from one place to another, for example, my accommodation at school to my classroom. And I'd use my cane to follow a pavement or a wall or the edge of the pavement to find where I'm going. And I learned to use landmarks like lampposts and rubbish bins, which I would hit with my cane to help me find the route. And I practiced this route every day, several times, and I learned to memorize how many roads I crossed or how many driveways I did encounter. And this is what I learned at school. And I also learned how to ascend and descend steps safely, cross roads by listening for traffic. And when there was no traffic, I knew it would be clear, so I could cross. And I also used my other senses, like my feet to detect the different surfaces on the ground. I used to use my smell to locate different food places. I could smell McDonald's or burgers. And I also used my hearing, what hearing level I have, to use the traffic and people's voices and people's footfalls to give me directions when I was walking. So these are the skills I was taught at school. And people think or if you're blind, you must automatically have these skills. And I use my hearing, my smell, my touch to give me a mental picture of my surroundings as I'm walking. But it's not true, actually. Everyone can have these skills. If you all went blind tomorrow, you could use the same kind of skills I would have or learn them. So it's just about using them every day in, day out, like I do, and they become more sensitive. And while I was at school, I learned other skills. So I also learned to cook, cut up fruit and vegetables safely, and learn to wash dishes. Although this is something I try and get out of as much as possible, so I let my girlfriend do the washing up. Now, I'm totally blind and partially deaf. Now, most people here might imagine being blind is the most difficult thing, but it's actually being deaf. Because to me, my blindness is stable, it doesn't change. Whereas with my deafness, it can change depending on the weather, or if it's windy, or if there's loud traffic or noises outside. The biggest challenge for me is in social situations, because I can't always hear the whole conversations, or I mishear words. And obviously, it's a combination of deafness and blindness, because I can't sign or lip read. But I just thought to myself, well, it always could be worse. My best friend at school was in a wheelchair, and he couldn't walk, and he couldn't move very much. And I imagined imagine trying to scratch your ass. I think this must be really frustrating. And for the last 22 years, I spent my life traveling around the world alone, mostly unaided, despite being totally blind and severely deaf. My dad worked for the railway, and I receive his pension, and that allows me to live and travel. And I also do talks around the world, in other cities, and sometimes I get paid, sometimes not. So that's how I fund my travels. But I didn't wake up one day and think, like many young people do, let's go traveling for a year. I came into traveling slowly. So initially, it started through my dad's stories. He was in the Merchant Navy, and he described to me crossing Australia from the east coast to west coast by train, and it taking more than 8 days. And he also told me about sailing up the St. Lawrence River into Canada with icebergs floating down the sides. And that fascinated me. That really infused me. But also when I was at school, there's a school for visually impaired and blind children, so we studied in Braille. But we also had tactile maps and tactile globes, so I was able to feel the different continents and also feel the globe, and I played for it for hours, spinning it around, trying to work out which continent was which and follow the shapes. So it was a combination of my education and studying history and geography that gave me my first sort of fascination for the world and life and about having adventures. But my interest in travel really began when I was 16 and I went to the States with the school. I went to Boston for a week, and everything was so different. Pavements were huge. I could sense the space. We're walking up the pavements. They were different to smaller streets in England. I noticed people talk with funny accents and different voices, and people come up to me and say, "Are you blind?" It's just so direct, and that would never happen in England. So it was really different and exciting. And I just thought to myself, I like this, so I want more. I want to go back to the States. So I did. And through my specialist education, I eventually went to university in 1998 and spent a 3-year degree studying American Studies, which included spending 5 months in the state of South Carolina. It was really interesting there. I met people from all different backgrounds, class, and cultures. I had a great time. I got into lots of different things and got into lots of trouble, including breaking a sink one night in the University Hall of Residence with the help of a bottle of whiskey. I accidentally collapsed onto one of the sink's pipes and caused a minor flood. I also spent a week in New Orleans, getting absolutely paralytic every night, hearing lots of jazz and blues and eating very spicy food and meeting lots of interesting people, including one night a very nice young lady who was topless. I'll let you work out how I might have found that out. And I went on to California, where I caused more chaos and mayhem with a young Australian girl I met at uni. And we ended up in a bar one night in San Francisco drinking something called mudslides, which is a triple alcoholic drink. And we were slugging these down at 1 in the morning, listening to blues and jazz. It was great fun. I later ended up in Hawaii. I'm still not sure how. You can read more about these escapades and the things I got up to in my first travel ebook called Seeing the World My Way. And I've also written a couple of others. So after being at university, I came back and I thought, I like this traveling thing. It's quite good. It's better than working. And by then I was 21, I was young. And to me, traveling at that age was about escapism. There was no ideals or big plans. I just wanted to run away because when I was traveling, I could be myself. I didn't have to worry about my family worrying about me and being blind or all that stuff. I could just be me. And so I wanted more. So I'd been traveling around the UK for about 5 years by this time, going to rock concerts and rock festivals with friends or by myself, camping in fields with sheep and cows. Sometimes they'd end up in the tent. And going staying in youth hostels, which is where you might share a room with 4, 5, 6 strangers from different countries. And to me, that was great because meeting people in different cultures, different countries, and it was all fascinating. It was a big learning curve. And for me, I was born with a curious brain, and it needs constant stimulation. So that's 2001-2, I wandered off to Australia and New Zealand for 5 months, and had great fun. And blind or not, Australia is quite easy to travel around. Once I sort of booked my first hostel and then landed in Australia, I just had members of staff to book the next hostel for me, and that's how I travel around Australia. It's really easy. And same in New Zealand. And I wanted to experience everything. I was young, I was adventurous, I was open-minded, and I'd try everything. I wanted to try drink, drugs, sex, and any genital activity possible. So I spent my first week in Australia jumping out of an airplane, with the help of someone else, of course, and skydiving, and it was great fun. And then I went on to New Zealand and did other crazy activities. So if it might ask, how do I do it? That's a good question. Why do I do it? That's an even better question. When I started traveling, it was about escapism, discovering myself. And as I got older and met more people, it's now about learning about people's cultures. So as people say, Tony, why does a blind person want to go and see another country? And the answer is, well, why not? The reason being, traveling and visiting another country is not just seeing the sights or the vistas with your eyes. I go traveling to eat the food, hear new music, discover new interesting smells, some nice, some less so. But ultimately, it's about meeting the people and engaging with different people, learning about their culture, their history, their life, how they cope with their challenges. In countries like the Gambia or Ghana, where things don't work every day, there's no instant access to water. You might be sat in a restaurant one night or someone's house, and the electricity goes off. They tell you the lights have gone out, and they carry on eating. So there's all these experiences that give me appreciation for the world and life. It allows me to grow as a person. And allow me to show people that I'm totally blind, I'm partially deaf, I can travel around the world. So it doesn't matter what your disability is, whether it be physical or mental, you can travel, you can do what you want, you can live your dreams. And one of the best experiences I had was I went to Ethiopia in 2019, made a documentary for the BBC travel show, and I stayed with a guy called Happy. Yes, that's his name, and yes, he's happy. And he showed me how to cook and make one of Ethiopia's national dish called injera, and what's the kind of stew made of stuff. Injera, it's like a spongy pizza-based bread, and you put the injera on top. And he said, what you do, Tony, is you grab some of the injera, rip it off, dip it in the sauce and the meat, wrap it around, make a little ball, and shove it in your mouth. But what was even better was then he fed me. And this is an amazing experience. So it's not just sharing food, but actually giving and taking. It was an amazing, wonderful, emotional experience. Just sharing food with friends or one person. This guy's just cooked an amazing meal. Was one of the best experiences in my life. And I just found it amazing. And that's what it's about. It's about people. And I go talk to people. I try and learn a few of their words. And you don't need to see to talk to people. You just need to engage. It's about connecting. People say, in traveling scary, Tony? No, don't worry about it. One of my favorite activities is bungee jumping. And yes, I close my eyes before I do every jump. So what about you, my wonderful audience here this afternoon? What is there in your lives that you find fascinating? Because you all do. You all have something in your life that's fascinating, whether it's your job or your colleagues or your family. You might not think about it. But ask yourself that question and try and answer it. Cheers. Thanks very much.